Hello, I'm Stan Hustad. I'm your marketing life coach. And I suspect that the title of this program has caught your attention. No matter whether you are in sales or marketing or not, it's really about life. You're right. The title is Fear Kills Everything. And indeed it does. Now, I've spoken on fear. I've read a great deal about fear. I've written about fear. I think I would like to consider myself less fearful, but there are times when I am deeply afraid. So today I'd like to talk to you once again, and perhaps talk to myself about the subject of how we can be less afraid, how we can deal with our fears, because truly fear kills everything. Now, in my well-worn little book called You Make the Difference, which is based on the idea, which is how you live and how you perform is how you can best sell and market yourself and products and services, I talk about that. In fact, Fear Kills Everything is chapter 1 in my book. And I'm just going to quote a few things right off the bat that begins chapter 1. Over 100 years ago, one of the more successful motivational speakers was a gentleman named Orison Swett Marden. Most of you have never heard of him. Quite a character. Very successful, and many people believe that he changed their life. It's a part of the history of American enterprise and truly of American success. He said, "Remember that whatever you dread, fear, you are attracting. Because the mind always relates with whatever dominates the thought. That which we think about most we get. And it is the easiest thing in the world to kill the possibility of realizing our ambitions by drawing fear into our world." When I was going through a career crash that left me almost poverty-stricken as I lost everything, I was encouraged by a man named Brian Tracy. Perhaps many of you have heard of him. You've heard his audio programs and seen his video shows such as this. And I remember Brian Tracy saying this: "The history of the human race is the history of ordinary people who've overcome their fears and accomplished extraordinary things." And then the writer St. Paul of Scripture said, "We do not have the spirit of fear, but we have a spirit of power and of love and self-confidence." Power, love, and self-confidence. Well, the reason it's chapter 1 in my book, and it's the reason I want to talk to you today about it, is simply this: fear does kill everything. Actually, it came from a real-life incident that happened a number of years ago. I was at a family reunion. You know, you've all been there. Some good times and some difficult times, or perhaps some awkward times. But our family and the extended family got along well, and we all enjoyed each other's company, so it was going very well. And we were gathered around the hors d'oeuvres table, and one of the cousins told the group of us that he had just quit his job. Well, of course, we were struck by that, because he had a very, very, very good job. He was doing extremely well. He was making lots of money, and he had a lifestyle to match. And he's quitting his job? Well, what are you going to do? He then described a new idea that he had thought about for some time in the industry that he was in. And so he was quitting his job, starting his own company, starting his own business with a new product that he believed would truly revolutionize the place and space that he was in and make him a multimillionaire. Very, very successful. Well, that's all good, but of course, like everybody else, just like you would be, is, well, what if it fails? What if it doesn't work? And you've lost your job, and you've got bills to pay. And so, as best we could, we kind of expressed, well, boy, that's great, that's wonderful, but what if it doesn't work out? And that's when this gentleman paused and just simply said to all of us, and I remember it to this very day, he said, you know, you can't go down that road. You can't think that way because fear kills everything. Fear kills everything. Indeed, it does. Hopes, dreams, ambitions, goals, fear can kill them. Relationships, fear can kill relationships. We've discovered that fear causes people to get sick. You've heard the expression scared to death. Well, I don't know if that literally happens on immediate sight, but people do die because of their fears. Fear does gnaw at them. Fear gets in the way of a life well lived, and people do die of their fears. Fear does kill everything. It can even kill life itself. Right now, without hopefully being too preachy or too negative or too pessimistic, I know I'm striking home with many of you. Because as you are thinking about your own life right now and the career and goals and the things you're trying to achieve, you understand that. Because I could simply ask this question: what if you knew that you would not fail? You didn't have to worry about failing in some new venture or new idea. And so you had no fear of failure. What would you do? Can you imagine how freed up you would be, what you might try, what you might seek to succeed at, if you weren't stymied by the fear? Most of the things that go wrong in our lives are rooted in the deep fears we have. We're afraid to make commitments. We're afraid to take risks. We're afraid to try new things. We're afraid, we're afraid, we're afraid. Fear kills everything. Now, this is not going to be your oftentimes Friday afternoon motivational speech about feel the fear, but do it anyhow, or don't be afraid. That kind of stuff is naive, and I don't want to be naive. I want to be a coach who is real. I wish that I had the secret to dealing with all of the fears and phobias that we have. And there are thousands of them, literally, things that people are afraid of. Some of them are completely irrational, but, they may be very rational to you. Some of them are things that we just have to deal with. They come from our background, they come from our environment, they come from our culture. Some people have suggested that a small child is afraid of two things. They are afraid of loud noises, and they're afraid of falling. Other than that, they're fearless. And we have to teach them to be afraid. Well, that may be the case because, and some of the things they should be afraid of. That bad dog might be fearful to them. Playing in the middle of the freeway, they better be afraid of that. That's right, being fearless can kill you too. So how do we understand and deal with the fears that are very rational and real, and those that are not there? They're imaginary, they're a phantom, they're something we create, they're something that comes from our background, something that we truly shouldn't be afraid of, but we are. It is truly a life journey to go from a life of fear and anxiety and worry to a life of power and of love and of self-confidence. It's hard to get there. And all of us do it very imperfectly. There are people who make it their business to deal with their fears every day. To somehow, in their praying, in their speaking, in their serving, and working with others, they deal with their fears every day. And that's a little bit of what we're going to think about, how we do that, how we gain that mindset by understanding all of those hundreds of thousands of things that can go wrong, and how we can begin to work with them. But we have to admit it right off the bat. As I oftentimes used to say when I was on the radio many years ago, and still do a lot of radio and TV work, is I'm not talking to myself. I'm not talking to you tonight as much as I'm talking to myself tonight. So please join me as we think about fear. And I am talking to myself. I am reminding myself of what fear can do to us and what it can do to each other. So with that in mind, let's try and think about the fears that particularly affect us, particularly because many of us are in sales and marketing. And fear gets in the way of how we are good salespeople, how we are powerful marketers. Now, of course, as I said, some fears are real and we need to be afraid of them. That's part of how we preserve ourselves. Flight response, fear, fly away, get away from danger. We need to do that. We need to call for help. But in many cases, our fears are so pervasive we don't know how to deal with them in a way that makes us more effective and makes us more powerful. Now, of all the fears out there, I have discovered that the fear of failure and poverty is probably the strongest one we deal with. It's the one that is most pervasive to all of us. And it's tough. And as I said before, that fear of poverty, particularly those of us who live in a Western, particularly North American culture, where we're used to the good life, it's even more pervasive. I've traveled around the world, and one of the advantages of poverty in some respects is you get used to it and you have less fear about it because you're just used to living on far less, and you learn how to deal with that. But living in an age of affluence and where people have jobs and money and many good things, the fear of losing those things and of falling into poverty is deeply fearful. Why is there so much fear around right now? People are afraid they'll lose their jobs, they'll lose their income, they'll lose their investments. There is deep fear of being poor, of being broke. Now, my friends, I've been there. I've been in those places, and that gripping fear is pervasive. And oftentimes that fear comes from our fear of failure. I believe we are made to achieve things. That's right, we're made to achieve. Part of God's design for our life is that we achieve good and great things. We're made to be goal setters. People are at their happiest when they're setting goals and achieving those goals and making their mark in the world. That's kind of what we're made for. We love to do that. And sometimes that leads to the fear. What if we don't? What if we don't succeed? As I said before, what would you try and do if you knew you would not fail? What if you knew that you would succeed? Wouldn't you try a whole lot of different things? Perhaps you'd try and find another job. Perhaps you'd try and find other work. Perhaps you would try and start a business. Many of us live our lives in the same place because we're just simply afraid of failing, and we're afraid that our failure will lead to incredible poverty, and we will do anything to avoid failing and being poor. Now, one of the things that I'm asking you to discover, particularly in the marketing life, is that failure may not be your friend. I'm not so naive as to believe well, I learn more from my failures than from my successes. Sometimes that's true, sometimes it's not. But please understand that adversity is part of the plan in life. And if you attempt to succeed in life in any significant way, you will have a number of failures. What is true of entrepreneurial people is that they fail a lot. Now, hopefully these failures are not fatal, but failure is a part of the human condition, and it's a part of how we sometimes do learn and how we get better at what we do. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, and I've failed at a lot of things, but the thing I have now discovered, which is helping me in an entrepreneurial fashion, is I no longer fear failure mightily. I understand that most of the successful people I know have had a number of failures in their life and are still failing at things, but they attempt to keep going and keep pressing on. So I simply ask you to remember that dealing with the fear of failure will be your first step to life success. Embrace your humanity, which means is you will make mistakes, you will fail, and no matter what kind of conditioning went into your life from your parents or schooling, please embrace that fact of life. Fear of failure. It will happen. Now that leads to our second fear. And this took a lot of work on my part because someone once told me there were 7,000 different phobias and fears. Well, I don't know, but such questions as how many fears are there has led to answers like, well, there are 7, or there are 7,000, or there are 500. It just simply means that nobody knows for sure. But they are pervasive. And so the second fear that I found was very much rooted in our character of being human. And that is, we want to be in relationships with other people. So we fear rejection. Deep fear. We don't like people to not want to deal with us. We don't want people not to like us. We don't want to be rejected. We don't want to ask the girl out for the date and have her say no. We don't want to ask for the sale and have them say, get lost. Now, I am not naive about this. Oftentimes when you have your motivational speaker, your sales coach, or that sales manager, he'll say, well, rejection, get on with it, get over it. It will happen. Don't worry about it. Fear of rejection. Now, my dear friends, that's just being naive. Let's face it, there is a whole lot of rejection that goes on in our life today. And we don't like it. I don't like to be turned down. I don't like people to say no to me. And even though I might try and build up my confidence and build up my psyche and have a strong ego and do all kinds of mental games with me, that's tough. And in today's world where oftentimes we have come from broken homes or divorces where we felt rejection, many of us have grown up in situations where there has been an incredible amount of rejection. And so when that sales manager says, well, don't worry about rejection, just get over it, hey, that's not what it's like to be human. And sometimes I have to discover and have found out that those people who can really deal with rejection are people who aren't very nice. The reason they can deal with rejection is they don't like people, they don't care about people. In fact, sometimes I think they almost have some sociopathic tendencies. They don't like you, they don't care about you, they don't think about you, so the fact that you don't like them, don't care about them, and reject them doesn't bother them. I do know, unfortunately, that some of the most successful people in the world are those people who don't fear rejection, and the reason they don't fear rejection is they don't care. And most of us do care, and most of us want to be accepted. On the other hand, please keep in mind that life has us to deal with rejection. One person said to me as I was writing a book, and she said, Stan, you don't want people to like your book. You want them to hate it or you want them to love it. You don't want them to like it. And I don't know how I feel about that because, you know, for someone to say, I don't like your book, I don't like your work, I don't like your offer, I don't want to deal with you, I don't want to do business with you, rejection is deeply difficult. And based on the fact that as I was raised by a mother who continually taught me to please and make other people happy, that's really hard for me. It's hard for me to deal with rejection. But I now am better at understanding that and knowing that I can't please everybody. I can't make everybody happy. I can't sell everybody. some people are not going to like me and like what I do. As someone once said who taught me the rule of public speaking, she said, hey, 25% of the people will like you no matter what. They like how you look, you remind them of somebody else, they just like everybody. 25% will dislike you, perhaps for the same reasons. The goal of a public speaker is to work with those 50% of the people who are somewhere in the middle, and hopefully they will enjoy and find your speech. But you cannot please everybody. You know, we want to. We want to win them all. We want to get every sale. And so somehow learning to understand that we will face rejection. Now here's a good little caveat for that. I have discovered that if I'm a good marketer, if I'm good at marketing myself and my business, I will get rejection, and sometimes that's a favor. Now in marketing, I teach people this. Sometimes the goal of marketing is to get the no's to say so faster. So that if I do a good job of putting my story and my offer right in front of people, some people will know right away this isn't what they want. They're sure of it. They don't like that. And so, if I've done a good job of marketing, people aren't thinking about it, people aren't mulling about it, people aren't dwelling on it. They either know it's a good idea or they don't. I'm trying to help the no's to say no faster. I don't want them thinking, dwelling, mulling, meditating, whatever else they do. And so what I have learned is I have to make my marketing message so clear that in some cases it is apparent as to who I am and what I do, and that what I am and what I do is not for everybody. It's not. Don't believe that. Don't believe that you can please everybody. Don't believe that everybody is a customer. Everybody is a potential client. That's not true. Many people are not potential clients. They're not potential customers. They don't want to work with you. They have no need. They don't perceive any need. They don't want it. And some of these people are just simply dysfunctional people who can't be persuaded or influenced in any way. And they will reject you, and sometimes they will reject you in very, very unkind and very, very bad and rude ways. I now understand that. And now, though, I use that as my friend because I'm really trying to help people make a good decision. And perhaps the best decision they can make is to reject my offer. It's good for them, and it's good for me. So perhaps as I move forward in my life and business, I have to understand that if I'm really good at what I do, if I make a good offer, there will be people who will not like it, not use it, not find it useful, and they will reject it. I am no longer fearful of deep rejection. But it still kind of hurts sometimes. Now, can you see how this works on each other? Why, if I'm rejected, then I'll fail. And if I'm rejected and I fail, then I'm going to be poor. I better not apply for that job because then I'll fail at getting that job. Oh, then I'm a failure. Then I'm going to be poor. Boy, can you think of the mind games you play with yourself and what fear does to you. It truly is starting to kill you. You're afraid of rejection. You're afraid of failure. You're afraid of poverty. And these things build on one another. The other fear which comes to mind, particularly in the marketing life, is what I call the fear of offending. That's right. Well, you see, we don't want to be rejected, so sometimes we're fearful of offending people. Now, I'm asking you to be very, very careful about this. I'm not saying, as someone said, hey, just tell it like it is, and don't care because, then you move on to the next one. I'm very aware of the fact that we are made, in many cases, to be people pleasers. You know, life is a lot like high school. We don't want to be the person that no one likes. Many of us have experienced that in reality. We don't want to offend people. We don't want people to reject us. And so many times we're afraid that if we do something, it will offend people. And as a result of that, this fear of what I call offensive selling or offensive marketing drives us to be less creative, to play it safe. But you know, I'm not being naive. We don't want that. We don't want people to reject us. We don't want to be a failure. We don't want to be an outsider. So again, please, I want to be humane. I'm not yelling at you like some bad sales manager. I'm not saying you should walk into a business situation and just simply lay it on there and let people deal with it as they can. My job is to make my presentation, my offer, as attractive and as motivating and encouraging as possible. But sometimes, because I'm afraid they won't like it and then reject me, I sometimes am not as creative and as useful and as clever and creative as I should be, because I might offend somebody. I guarantee you, the thing, and I learned this many, many years in radio, the thing that pleases somebody will offend another person. I try to be authentic and real. I'm always prepared to apologize, and I mean that sincerely. But those are fears that we have. I've learned that in many cases I simply have to be strong and bold and tell the truth, and that my personality and my way of speaking and my way of presenting myself, I should not be offensive in that way. But if I speak the truth boldly and with love and compassion, I do understand that sometimes I may run the risk of offending people. But I know that there have been great disasters in life because people were afraid of what others would say, what other people might think. And that has gotten everybody from the adolescent who takes drugs, to the sales manager who cuts corners, to the CEO ready to please that board. This fear of offending, of not pleasing others, can get you into a great deal of trouble. But it's real, and we have to learn to deal with it. And now, some of you are saying, Stan, what's the answer? Well, my friends, if I had the answer to all the fears, I would be rich, powerful, and famous, and I'm not. There are no easy answers to life, such as how do we deal with our fears. And one of the things I am afraid of is there are too many people today who really think there are easy answers to life. Every message is out there. Sell without fear. If you do this, if you do this, if you do this, all good things will happen. You know, there are no easy answers to any of these issues in life. It's not easy to deal with our fears. It's not easy to lose weight. It's not easy to get in shape. It's not easy to do anything worthwhile. And so I don't have the answer. I simply know that if we better understand how we are moved and how we are motivated and why this is a part of our life, it is easier for us to be more thoughtful, be more prayerful. It is easier for us to be brave and deal with that fear. Part of how I deal with the fact that I'm afraid of offending people is to have more self-confidence in who I am and what I do. And the greater self-confidence I have, the less I worry about whether people are offended or not. As long as I don't do things to intentionally offend them or to hurt them or to deceive them, which I should not do, I do know that even right now, some of you who are watching this are going to say, I don't like that, I don't believe in that, that won't work. And it could go back to a variety of things that are in me and in you and between us. But please keep in mind the fear of offending, the fear of offensive selling is very deep and very difficult to deal with. But I want to be aware of that. Now, I want to make this very practical for you because this is sales and marketing. This is not psychology. I am not a psychologist. I'm a coach. I'm a broadcaster. In many cases, I say I'm simply an overeducated disc jockey trying to help you with radio and TV programs that might make you more effective in how you live your life. So this is not psychological advice, and please do not claim it as any such thing. It's simply coaching for better living and for better marketing and hopefully more success in life, business, and selling. The other fear that we have, and this is pervasive to everybody in sales and marketing, their fear of not knowing what to say. Well, if I get in front of people, what do I say? That's why your sales manager or your marketing people give you scripts. Well, just say this. Don't deviate. Just say this. Now, the reason they're doing that, they know that most of us, particularly when we're just beginning, we're fearful that we have nothing to say. Now, I work a lot in the insurance and financial services, and someone says, well, I sell insurance. Well, how good is that? Is that going to attract people? If I tell a person on the airplane, well, what do you do? And I answer, I sell insurance. Oh, no one says, oh, that sounds interesting. Tell me more. Most of us know that when we walk into a situation, we're fearful that we don't know what to say. We don't know how to handle it. Now, the fear of public speaking is pervasive. In fact, you've probably heard that it is one of the great fears, maybe the number one fear of all people. And a lot of my coaching is helping people to really perform as public speakers and as broadcasters and people who are on television such as this, helping them overcome their fear of public speaking, their fear of not knowing what to say. I've literally dealt with people who have shown great courage and bravery in battle, in the face of combat, yet the idea of speaking in public was incredibly fearful to them. That's why part of the marketing life is to take time to learn your scripts, to learn your roles, to learn what makes you unique and valuable and powerful, and to actually have something that is worth talking about, worth speaking about, that is attractive and energizing and creating value for people. The fear that we walk into a situation and we have nothing that we know is of any interest to anyone. It's same old stuff. It's the things they have heard before. There's nothing unique, powerful. We truly believe we have nothing to say. So managers, leaders, people who are performers, help your people learn to perform, to know what to say and how to say it well. This is a powerful, something very practical that you can do. I don't teach people to just simply say a line. I help people develop ways so that they know that in every life situation, they have things that are worth hearing, they're worth saying, they're worth sharing with others. And that's powerful. That's good stuff. And I want to help you get that. I want to help you have that confidence, knowing that you can walk into the world of business, life, and commerce, and you can speak well, that you have something worth saying, and you know how to say it. Because it's a deep fear to believe, I'm afraid I have nothing to say. Well, that leads to the fifth fear, and this is something that I'm not so sure I can particularly help you with, but I would like to. Perhaps I can help you. This is the deep, deep fear that we have no value. Now, do you see how this builds on people? I'm worthless. I have no value. Why are people afraid of losing their job? Because that is how they have defined their value. This is how people pay me. And if I lose my job, I've lost my value. And if I lose my value, I'm going to be wordless and speechless. I'm going to be rejected. I'm going to fail. And I'm going to be poor. Oh my goodness, now we have all 5 fears working and beating up on us in life. And right now, particularly in these difficult times, I'm finding people who are in that situation. However, I do know of a man, he actually worked the assembly line at an automobile assembly plant. And it was an interesting contrast because I do know that one of his friends simply said this, "All I've done for 30 years is build cars. That's all I know what to do. My God, if I lost my job on the line, I wouldn't know what to do. Building a car is all I can do." A friend also said this, who also worked on the assembly line. "Hey, you know what? I can do drywall. I can repair cars. I can do installing of plumbing and heating. I can do lots of things that people want." And what he knew deep in his heart, that he was a valuable person. His value was not just in assembling a car on the assembly line. It was that he was full of talents and skills and abilities that he knew that he could bring into the marketplace for lots of people. As he said to me, "I know that I can be very helpful to lots of people. I can do lots of things that people need to have done." Essentially, you might meet him today and call him a handyman. But he's incredibly valuable to many people. And there's no fear because he knows that he has great value. Now, if you're a brain surgeon, you know that. If you're in one of those prized possessions that there's a scarcity, and by the way, there's hardly any of those anymore. In fact, I actually saw an advertisement for a neurology clinic, and I say, look, even brain surgeons are having to advertise these days. But most of us are not so blessed that we know that we are incredibly valuable. And that's a lot of what you have to do. I'm always seeking ways to create not only multiple streams of income, but ways that I can be helpful and valuable to other people. That's the goal in life. What I have discovered is that people who know and have the great self-confidence that they bring value to others, that they are valuable. And they also live with a spiritual confidence that they are a child of God and God has great purposes for them and with them. They live with the confidence of their own value in life and in career and business. Wow. When they know that, then their coaching is to help them create messages and ways of acting and performing and treating other people so that that value is communicated. That means that they can deal with rejection, knowing that some people reject but others won't, and they can handle that. They know that they will always be creating value, and so they probably will not fail at everything they do. They know that they will not offend people. They will bring value to the majority of people. And as a result of that, because they know they have great value, because they know how to communicate it, because they no longer fear that they have to be pleasing to everybody, because they are no longer plagued by the fear of rejection, because they understand that failure is a part of life, the 5 great fears of life become less and less. And as I say, they live with less fear in a fearful world. A gentleman named Ernest Becker many years ago wrote a book called The Denial of Death, and it's a tough book. I don't agree with everything in it, but I read it often because what Ernest Becker said is that when it comes down to it, most of our fears, all of our fears, flow out of our fear of death. And it's not just the dying, it's the fact that we will be gone and insignificant. And that somehow, through faith and service, if we can overcome that deep fear of death, all the rest of the fears go away. You and I know people like that who may even be living with a death sentence. They know they're going to die. And because of that, they have dealt with it. They may not have embraced it, but they're engaged with it. And now the fear of death has gone away, and they are truly fearless. They are brave. They are bold. They truly walk, even though they may not be able to walk physically. They walk into life unafraid. I just ask you to let that sit on your head for a while, that perhaps through a life of faith and relationships and building legacy, we finally come to the point in our lives where we no longer fear that great failure of life, death itself. Just something to think about. Maybe a little philosophy to help you bring value and business to others. Now, what I also want you to understand is this learning to live with a life of less fear is not only good for your life and your career, it's something that you can share with others, which makes you more valuable to others. Because I guarantee you, every person you meet and every person you're trying to market and sell to is dealing with their own phobias and their own fears, and they tend to arise out of these fears that we have mentioned. And the more you become a man, a woman of courage and grace and confidence, the more you will attract people. They'll want to work with you. They want to have something about your life experience that you have. They may not necessarily want to buy what you have right now, but they want to be with you and be your friend. And if they need what you have, they certainly want to buy it from you because it's their desire to live a life like yours. That's why we say it's the marketing life. People buy you. And how you live a life without fear makes you more attractive to others, makes you more useful and helpful to them. They want to be like you, not only just buy from you. It's your life. So there we go. The 5 great fears that can kill us all. But if we learn to deal with them and share that life learning with others, I guarantee you, fear will not kill everything. In fact, your less fear will bring you happiness and great success. That's my wish for you. Don't be afraid. Thanks for listening. We'll talk more. Bye for now.